So, hello everyone. Welcome to Ficção na Diaspora, or as I will loosely translate, fiction in the diaspora. We begin our festival with this conversation. With us, we have Susana Imaginário, who co-runs a board gaming retreat in Ireland. We will later talk about my free invitation for it. Okay, Susana? She's she's the author of the Timelessness series, a mix of mythology, satire, and sci-fi. We also have João Fernandes Silva, who moved to England, writes fantasy and sci-fi, and he's a member of the British Science Fiction Association. So you now know who you have to be extra nice with. We also have Patricia Moraes, who left Portugal to live in England, China, France, and is currently in Belgium. She writes fantasy in Portuguese and has published Sombras and Chamas by Cool Books. Ricardo Pinto is the only one here who didn't leave Portugal. His parents did it for him. He's also established in the UK and is best known in this country, in Portugal, for the fantasy trilogy A Dança de Pedra do Camaleão, despite having other titles in his curriculum. I'm guessing you only write in English, right, Ricardo?
Yeah. I couldn't possibly write in Portuguese. It would be a disaster.
But you have some bases.
Some bases. Oh, I can speak Portuguese quite badly. I wouldn't want to inflict it on anyone. And apparently I have a very bad Scottish accent when I speak Portuguese. So
I think that will be fun to hear. We will try later if you have the time. Okay. And last but not least, we have Ana Reis, who writes mainly dark fantasy, such as The Summoner's Cry, which is in English, but she also writes in Portuguese. For example, her short story, O Caça-Cidades, and she's one of the authors of Os Medos na Cidade, an anthology published by Divergência here in Portugal. If you Google her, it will say she's living in France, but I have the idea that you moved recently. Is that correct, Anna?
Yeah, it's a complicated story. I'm actually moving back to France again, so we could say...
Oh, so you went out and then you are going back. So, yeah. Okay, so I'm the only one in Portugal right now, which is perfectly correct for our theme, since we are speaking about diaspora. And I would like to begin to ask to all of you if you feel that your writing, your themes, characters, world building were influenced by being Portuguese or having Portuguese roots while living in a place with a different culture and language. I don't know if we have volunteers to begin or if do I have to pick someone by force?
Pick someone.
Okay, so let me see. Anaína now. João, can you begin, please?
Yeah, that's fine. Hello, everyone, and thanks for the invite to be able to chat with these lovely authors. I think it's almost undeniable that pretty much anyone that leaves their home will have some sort of deeper connection to it, especially the longer you stay outside of your country, the deeper the influences will be, I think. And I've kind of noticed that in my writing. So when I first started writing, I didn't really have that very specific and set influence on my roots and on where I come from, which is Ribatejo. But I think now I've been kind of exploring more of the, like, what can I potentially write that is considered Portuguese fantasy, not just fantasy with like a, just some stamp on it that says, oh, I'm a Portuguese guy. I think it's also not just the roots to the country, but it's also the process of moving itself. I think a lot of the stuff that I write tends to follow people who have this sense of estrangement and a sense of displacement, and they're just really struggling to find the place for them to belong. And the place where they're from, it's no longer a possibility for them to come back to it. But the place where they are might not necessarily be the best place for them, or they might not be necessarily completely happy there. So there's always this struggle with belonging and with finding the true place for them to be in. Yeah.
So it's more about the journey and the displacement in general than everything else, correct?
I think it's both. I think it's the fact that you're no longer surrounded by the things that you were surrounded by when you grew up, but it's also the process of moving that changes you and forces you to adapt. And once you look back at things you left behind, then you see that you've also changed quite a bit, and maybe some things stay the same and some things changed as well. But I think one of the most important things in my writing, and I feel that this comes across quite strongly, is really the process of moving and finding your footing.
Do you think that influenced your position as a member of the British Science Fiction Association?
Well, I think that had to do more with my. I just want to participate and be involved with as many things as possible, and I think being someone who's not British, I think it's essential to have a representation of diaspora there. I mean, they've accepted me, obviously, so that's something that they're also cherishing quite a bit. So I'm happy that has been the case.
Susanna, do you feel the same way?
I can relate with the strangeness of it and having to adapt, even the depressive aspects, just adapt and evolve. I try not to. I mean, there's not many world-building elements from Portugal, apart from maybe the weather that I do miss. But I don't see it, or I try not to put it there. But some people do see it. My editor, especially, she's always pointing out some expressions and just the way that I present things on the page. It's very different than what a native English speaker would do. Sometimes it works in my favor, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, I can't get away from the fact that I am Portuguese. I lived most of my life in Portugal, and that is always going to stay with me. And yeah, whatever I can use to make my fiction better, I will.
Yeah, I was going to ask if your editor thinks that that Portugueseness, for saying in your works, or enriches the text. But I think you already answered. Like sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, it's tricky.
So it's a balance, right? Basically, and you basically have no idea what will help and what it doesn't, right?
No, sometimes I do, but how to explain? It's still a bit of a trial and error. I mean, I've only been writing in English for the past 4 years, more or less, so I have a lot to learn, and I am still learning. I'm editing my latest book at the moment, so yeah, I have a lot to learn.
Anna, can I move on to you? Do you still remember the initial question?
Yeah, I think so. About if I feel that the Portuguese culture influences my writing. That was the question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I use a lot of words, but it's that, yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So yeah, I agree with João a lot. So when he was talking, I was just nodding my head like, yeah. It feels, it's my experience as well. When you move abroad and you leave your country, you have this dream that you're going to start your life from scratch, but you're actually bringing a lot of stuff with you that you didn't realize before. So I notice a lot of my writing, a lot of my stories are about identity and trying to find a place to belong. I think my characters are always like searching for a place to belong. And it's interesting because when you try to belong somewhere different, where you are different, there's always this internal struggle. Like, how much are you going to change? How much are you going to compromise? How much are you going to forget your own roots, your own culture? So yeah, I think it influences a lot. I didn't want to admit it at the beginning, but yeah, all my stories revolve around that. And more recently, I became very interested in Portuguese mythology because it's something we don't talk about a lot. There's not a lot of books, and I'm reading more and more and exploring more and more and trying to see how I could eventually incorporate them in my stories.
We actually have an anthology launched that will be launched tomorrow, which is short stories based on Portuguese mythology. We will have to ask you next time. Second volume.
Yeah, why not?
Patricia, you are probably the one, probably not, you are the one here that has lived in the most diversified places. So I'm guessing you had a lot of different cultures to compare to Portugal, for saying. Can you share your experience?
Yeah, regarding like whether Portugal influences my writing, my answer is definitely yes, because even my main character, she's half Portuguese. She grew up in Portugal, and then after some tragic event, she moves away. And so, yeah, I can definitely relate. And obviously, I try to make her as Portuguese as she can be, while still having some influences of other cultures there. But I kind of agree with what Anna was saying about not feeling like belonging in a place. So my character does a lot of that. Like she runs away a lot, and she's always like having that missing home. And there's a lot of times that where she reflects to like how things were in Portugal or her life was in Portugal, and maybe it comes from a place of like my own fears and my own experience of living away, and kind of thinking like, okay, yes, I love these new different cultures that I've experienced, but there's always that part of you that it's still very much Portuguese, and it still misses home quite a lot. So, and I do use other cultures as an influence for my writing. I try to put as much mythology from other places that I've traveled to in my books. Like the second book is a lot of it is influenced on my travels to South America, and the book that I'm still writing, the third one, it's also very influenced by my China travels. So yeah, it's something that it's very much present in my writing.
Thank you. Ricardo, I left you for last because you don't have the experience of growing up in Portugal and moving out, but you have the experience of being...
No, I do have experience. I left Portugal when I was 6. So I was born in Portugal, in Portugal, and my experience, the thing, Portugal for me was essentially my family who were with me, and but it was deeply in my unconscious. And we left Portugal when I was 6. We took a long train journey through Paris, and then we crossed the sea to England. And what I remember really was how, because I lived right, near the sea, and I had this experience of lots of sun, and suddenly I was in this very dark place. And so actually my Stone Dance of the Chameleon books, I didn't realize that what they were was a mythological take on my family. I didn't realize that there was any Portuguese influence in them at all. And yet my story starts with a person who is from somewhere deep in the south, who's living in a cold northern country. And he basically takes a sea journey to go back, and then a long journey to get to the center of a place, which at the entrance of it has symbols all over the place, which look like this, which is, can you see that? Can you see it? No, sorry. You see quincunx. It's like the
Yes.
5 on the dice. On the dice, the number 5 has got four and a dot in the middle. And I've always been obsessed with this symbol, and then I suddenly saw it was on the Portuguese flag. It's everywhere. It's all over the Portuguese flag. Symbol of the thing. So I actually marked this place, which is Osracum, which is this kind of caldera where the very rich people live. And essentially, I marked the entrance of this very strange place, which was incredibly beautiful, as having the symbol of the quincunx, this 5 thing. So although I didn't realize, I was marking this as being Portugal, so that when you go into the gate, you go into my childhood Portugal. And so it's all about Portugal. I mean, the red and green, which are very important colors. And again, it's on the flag. It's like I'm slightly obsessed with the flag. And my book is fundamentally very similar to what other people have said. It is about looking at the culture a bit from the outside, because not only did I feel I was in exile from my proper place, but I also felt that I was always an outsider. I was always seeing things from an outside point of view, and I think that for a writer that is very, very helpful, because I mean, to write you need to be able to. You have to be able to sit back and see things from the outside. So I think everything about my writing is to do with Portugal, really, on some level.
Well, I was expecting something about being raised by Portuguese parents, and I got a lot more than that.
My books, yes, I mean, Portuguese. I was very much raised by Portuguese parents. There's a lot. In Britain, if you are raised by Portuguese parents, you are considered to be a bit too emotional and a bit too passionate, and I thought that was all to do with my family, but it's obviously a Portuguese characteristic, I think. Anyway, but the thing is that my book is fundamentally a mythological take on my family. So that all of these main characters, who are empresses and all kinds of strange people, are actually Portuguese people. It's my mother, it's my aunts, it's my cousins. So it's the people are very, very Portuguese, and they're very dramatic, and they're very a bit. There's a lot of darkness actually, which I don't know if that comes from Portugal. I don't know enough about that. A sort of sadness, saudade, and all that stuff. So I think they are very Portuguese.
Okay, I will have to reread them with that point of view. So we have a question from the public. Cristina is asking if you read other Portuguese authors. All of that, I think that's a question for all of you.
I read all of the authors in this panel except from João, but I read all the books from everyone, including you, Ines.
I'm afraid I just don't. This is a terrible thing to say, but I don't really read fiction. I used to when I was younger, and I just don't read fiction. And I couldn't read. I tried to read. Is it Rostrelhas Máscaras? The book by. I find Portuguese language extremely beautiful, but it's quite hard for me to read it. So.
And there are not many books that are translated in English, right?
Well, yeah, not really. Fernando Pessoa, I think, is translated. I've got a few of his books, but not many, I'm afraid. Sorry.
I definitely read books from other Portuguese authors, but I'm afraid that from this group, I've only read Anna's books, at least the Casa Cidades, and her new one, when it was still the short story that she now has reworked. I read the original one, but I've seen Susanna's book quite a lot, and it's definitely on my to-read list for next. Yes, but I will try and read the others as well.
So the Sumner's Cry, or the one she was it the Sumner's Cry, or the one she's working right now?
Yeah, the Summoner's Cry, when it was still called Nobody Tricks the Trickster.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Okay. So we had 3 out of 5.
I think from this panel, I've only read Susanna's debut, Weird Gods. I have not read the second and the third in the trilogy yet, and I've been meaning to read Anna's Summoner's Cry for a while, but I haven't gotten the chance to do it. But yeah, I mean, I definitely read other Portuguese authors, mostly the big names, but yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be fantasy writers, I think. I think the question is general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I did, obviously, before I knew how to read in English. These days, for example, Fernando Pessoa, I read his works again in English, and actually I like it more in English for some reason. I've read Anna's books, 2 of them, To Trick a Trickster and The Summoner's Cry. And I did a bit of better reading for João, but yeah, I don't think I was very good at it. I didn't have the time. So I was kind of like, oh, I'm sorry. But yeah, these days I rarely read in Portuguese, unfortunately. I just prefer English. What can I say?
Is your book out yet, João, or are you still working on it?
No, so I have a few of them in the pipeline that I'm still kind of trying to figure out what the best way is to work them out. But right now I've only got short stories out. I don't really have any novels, full novels out.
Yes.
I mean, I finished
I
them.
read your short story. I read your short story, the one you published. When was it?
And
I forgot the name.
In terms of novels, like I don't really have any of them out yet. But I think within the next year, if I'm lucky, I'll find a way to launch them out into the world.
Okay, so from this we can know that Susanna cannot be hired as a beta reader. Anna Reis is really popular in this group, and we will have João's book in during this year, and we will pressure him to do so. Correct?
That sounds fair enough.
He's feeling the pressure already.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if people in general have been paying attention for the introduction, as they should, because you are all great to introduce. That some of you write in your mother tongue, others don't. Some of you do both. And what is the basis for that decision? What's the second part of this question? Yes. Yeah, I remember. I just trying to phrase it. I have a feeling that you do know this, but so do you feel any difference between the Portuguese public and the English readers?
Yes.
Do I have to simplify? I know. I know I went a bit wild here, so do you want me to repeat in a simplifier way? I can do it.
No, I think it was clear, at least for me.
It was clear.
Okay, so do you want to be the first one, Anna?
Oh, yeah, I can start. I mean, as you know, I work as a science writer, so I write in English most of my days, most of the day. So writing in Portuguese feels really weird. So even though my accent is not so great, even though my spoken English is not so good, when I'm writing, I do tend to write in English because that's what I do. And also because I read a lot of fantasy novels in English when I started reading mostly fantasy. So I think after that, reading fantasy or writing fantasy in Portuguese became very challenging. I just feel so wrong because there's a lot of tropes that don't translate well into Portuguese, a lot of words that don't translate well. So it feels more natural to write in English, I would say. So it's funny that when I write in Portuguese, I do tend to write more non-fantasy stories. That was the example of O Cidades, because I tend to prefer more family drama and not so much fantasy when I write in Portuguese. And about the second part of the question, if the readers are different, yeah, it's very different. I mean, Portuguese readers and international readers have very different expectations. I don't know how to elaborate this, but yeah, it's very different. Yeah, I would say, as someone living abroad and writing in Portuguese, I think Patricia will agree with me. It's very challenging to connect with your audience, with your public, if you're not living in Portugal, but you're writing in Portuguese. So that adds an extra layer of complexity.
Ricardo, do you want to elaborate since you are the second one understanding the question?
I want to say I couldn't possibly write in Portuguese. It has to be English because that's the only language I could possibly. I just couldn't do it in Portuguese. And I've actually found my Portuguese readers, who basically, at least the ones who talk to me or write to me, seem to get right through to the very deep themes in my books in a way that I hardly have ever had anybody else from any other country say. So, and I don't know why that is, but all my most penetrating readers are Portuguese. That's it.
Okay.
I've got nothing more to say.
It's just the way you read.
Sorry?
Say that again?
Oh, so I thought out loud. It's just the way we read, I think. Similar thing happens with me. But I always thought it was because they're Portuguese reading in English, so they pay more attention. Don't know if it's correct. That's my theory. Anyways.
Okay, so
Yeah, I think my approach is a bit similar to what Anna said. I think when I've moved abroad, I had done very little writing before that, and even though I had been reading quite a lot and quite aggressively, and especially even in my younger days, mostly reading fantasy, I just couldn't find any sci-fi books in Portugal back then, like at all. And I remember having to order from Amazon UK because there was no Amazon Portugal at the time, and I used to pay insane amounts of money just in postal fees just because I couldn't get my hands on, the basic science fiction novels that I wanted to read. So that's something that I've always felt like I wasn't sure there would be a market in Portugal if I wrote in Portuguese science fiction. I mean, of course, I guess it depends on what your goals are. If your goal is to just have something out there, give back to your audience, give back to your country, and be one of the first to pioneer a genre in your country that you're from, I think that's great, and I would probably write in Portuguese. But if I plan to make this a full-time career eventually, like in 10 years or 30 years or 40 years or whatever time it takes, I would most likely have to do it in English. I hate to be the one that brings up the money, but I mean, it has to be said that the English market is I don't know how many times bigger than the Portuguese market, and you know, the interest in the genres that I write are much stronger outside. I mean, this is, at least, I'm not saying the readers in Portugal are not seeking these stories, because I know they are, because I was, but I guess it needs to be like a revolution from the publisher side, and I think it's already underway. But I think it needs to be a revolution that kind of puts these more speculative genres back into the spotlight where they belong, in my opinion. Yeah.
Would you say that the science fiction, the Portuguese science fiction that has been written, is too influenced by the Anglo-Saxonic versions, per se?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, and I think there's definitely a room for more Portuguese sci-fi writers to write sci-fi. That's, you know, why not a Portuguese spreading colonies around the galaxy, or, you know, something like that. I mean, there's definitely a room for that, and there's definitely a lot of material from Portuguese history to base ourselves off of. And I think I'm doing that. I'm just simply not doing it in English. Sorry, not in Portuguese.
In Portuguese.
Yeah.
And I think you are, Patricia, the only one. Do you want to add something?
Yes, so I definitely started writing when I started writing, I started in Portuguese. I was still living in Portugal, and then I moved in the meantime. And at a certain point, like, my editors, they started saying how even though I was writing Portuguese, the way that I was writing and thinking still was starting to resemble quite too much English. So I always had to do, like, you know, one final editing before delivering it to my editors to, like, fix up the language problems. And you know, I was at this stage where I wasn't really a native speaker of English. Obviously, I'm still not, but I was also, like, not writing very well in Portuguese, because, you know, the languages were just getting so mixed up that I decided, okay, like, well, let's just try and do both then. You know, I still have to give it to an editor to fix my Portuguese language problems, because now I work in communications. So, like Anna, like, my work is done in English all the time. So it came to a moment where, like, I'm always thinking in English. And if I have a problem with the, while I'm writing, I have to think about the scene in English first, you know, write a quick draft in English, and then I can translate, you know, my idea to Portuguese. So I'm always, like, transferring between both languages, even when I'm doing, the Portuguese version. So I decided, like, why not try and do both? You know, might as well, because it has to go to an editor for Portuguese, and it has to go to an editor. Obviously, it needs to go to an editor anyway, but I need to fix the language issues with the Portuguese, and I need to fix the language issues with the English. So might as well just try and, you know, write my main idea and then just, you know, correct it in the editing process. So I decided to try, you know, having a writing career in both languages. And yes, I agree with what Anna was saying. I was nodding the whole time. It's quite difficult to connect with your Portuguese audience, because obviously you want to connect with them, but then you are not there. So you can't always, like, you know, be present, you know, with the Portuguese book community, because you also are at the same time trying to engage with the English audience community. So it's like, you know, you have a foot in both worlds, but you never really actually, you know, all the way there.
And it
So yeah, it's
must
quite
be exhaustive trying to keep two publics at the same time.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
We have another question from the public. Carlos is asking if you think there is a current trend benefiting non-English author nowadays.
Wow.
Silence. Cree, cree.
If there is, I don't feel it. No, quite the contrary.
It can help to have, if you're writing in the English market, for example, if you have an exotic name, by being Portuguese, I think that can help to some extent because you become more memorable. That's the only thing I can think to say about this.
No. In my experience, my name is Susan Imaginário, and I thought that was one of the few things I had going for me as an author. And it's working against me sometimes because people don't believe it's my real name, for one. They think I'm just too full of myself or something. So, yeah, so
I
no.
thought it was on him. I'm sorry.
Yes, even you thought that. No.
No, I did too.
Yeah, no, it is my real name, but
I thought it was a brilliant writer's name that you had made up for yourself. But
I think I'm
there
on
you
the
go.
other end of the spectrum, which I might have the most Portuguese name ever, which makes it quite complicated for like when I have material out. It's very hard to get any attention because people Google my name and they find anything but me. So that's
well, in my case, they think I'm a footballer.
Well, same for me actually. A Portuguese goalkeeper.
So you are all football players making a lot of money.
I do regret not writing under the name Ricardo Mendes Pinto because it's more unusual name in Portugal, so it caused less confusion. But I didn't do that, so.
Yeah, but imagine trying to Google your name and then it will appear Sean Mendes or something like that. But nothing against him, but he's totally opposite of what you do.
The only thing I can add is that my name is Anna. I thought it was a super common name. But actually in France it's quite hard because my colleagues keep forgetting it's like Anna with one N and no, it's like they keep mixing my name and just calling me something else. So that was very unexpected, I would say.
Yeah, you can try to burn them with even Starbucks, get it right. Even if you don't go to Starbucks, just say that. I'm going to change directions here and going a little bit. Thinking of diaspora as the movement from one place to another, how do you feel it both on a daily basis and in relation with your literature? We have time, so you can think about that.
It's a very good question. I think it's kind of ties back to what I said in the beginning. I feel it pretty much on a daily basis on everything that I do. Like I think my whole existence is like embedded in it. I think I cannot really see myself anymore as just the Portuguese guy. Like I'm the Portuguese guy that's living abroad. So it changes your identity, and like even when I go back to Portugal to visit my friends and family, like it no longer feels the same because I bring a lot of baggage from being abroad for so long. And I think that baggage, we just kind of collect it and we just kind of bring it wherever we go. And it's the same with the writing. I mean, writing is always an expression of the things that you're interested in, the things that you've learned, the things that you're interested in. So yeah, I mean, I think it comes across. I think every of my characters has a little bit of me. Some of them are more on the dark side, some of more on the light side. But one thing that all ties them together is the fact that they're all pretty unadjusted when it comes to the place where they're from and where they live, and they're all seeking the same thing, which is closure and balance and a home that they've never felt like they had or they're missing because they haven't been there for so long.
Well, it occurs to me that the way that the world is going, diaspora, there's going to be more people in diaspora than there are going to be in their home countries because of climate change and forced migration and so on. So actually, I suspect that the stories written by people who are in a diaspora are likely to become, in future years, more universal stories.
Okay.
That's a very nice thought.
Pondering my wise statement.
So we all like that idea so
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
just letting it sink.
Yeah.
I will be thinking about it because it never occurred to me, but I can relate again with a lot with what João said. And yes, my characters, most of them, they are always moving around and trying to find a place where they belong. It is a recurring theme, that I'm going to analyze to death. Because I didn't realize, but I guess it comes from this feeling of always being displaced, always being the observers, always trying to learn to catch up, being in a conversation or just trying to learn the history, the culture of a new place. I mean, in the last 10 years, I moved countries twice. It's the same language, but it's a different culture. And I think I added a lot of that baggage into my work. So, yeah, interesting. I'm going to be thinking about it, maybe write another book about it specifically, who knows?
Yes, please.
There's another way. I had another thought, which is that another way in which people who write about diasporas are going to become more and more current is that because the world is changing so fast with technology and so on, even people in their own country are becoming rather like we've all described, having problems of identity, problems of not knowing what they belong to because their countries are changing so fast and the world is changing so fast. So I think diasporan literature is going to be very central, if it isn't already. I'm just making us all feel better, okay?
If I may add, I actually have been reading diaspora literature that has been written in the last century. So it has something in that I realized it was written in the periphery, and as you say, is now becoming more and more coming more to the center for saying. And that really, as you said, it really reflects the nowadays. But just my little input. So, Anna, Patricia, do you want to add something? Just agree, disagree?
I agree. I just want to add, I don't know if this is very positive, but I think as time progresses, I mean, I'm also married to a non-Portuguese, so I have this other culture with me at all times, Latin American culture. And we lived in France, in Germany. And it's funny, as we move around, we always bring a little piece of that country we just left with us. So I couldn't go back to Portugal anymore because I would miss French cheese too much. I would not be able to live without it. And I mean, the beer in Germany, it's like when you're just moving around a lot, you kind of create your own culture, which is very, very unique to you. And in a sense, to your family, to those that are close to you. And I think that's what it means. And there's a negative point is like you're never fully satisfied because you want to have everything you love at once, but you can't because they exist in different parts of the world. So you're always like carrying too much within yourself and missing things and not feeling satisfied That's the negative part. The positive part, I would say, that gives you an opportunity to create something new, because there's nobody quite like you if you're moving around a lot. It's like nobody has the same set of experiences you do. And I just hope this doesn't mean nobody will understand me, because that's a fear I have, because, you know, my husband speaks Spanish. We speak Portuguese mixed with Spanish. And sometimes I'm speaking with Portuguese and I'm like, that word doesn't exist. And like, what the hell are you saying? And I kind of feel like this, that sometimes I'm like gaining a lot and losing a lot at the same time. And there's like this immense joy of having more things, having more experiences, and this immense fear that nobody will understand you because you're just too strange, you know.
I think strange is good.
If it helps, I totally understand what you mean. Yeah, I was like, yes.
If you're writing in genre fiction, science fiction and fantasy, strange is good. You know, I mean, you want to be as disconnected as you possibly can be, because I mean, as you were saying, Anna, if what you're doing is you're synthesizing different cultures together, and when you're doing world building for science fiction and fantasy and so on, that's the other thing that you're doing. You are synthesizing cultures together, and you are you're a very keen observer of the way people interact with each other who are from different cultures. So it's very easy to write about aliens. It's easier to write about an alien if you've been an alien than if you're just sitting comfortably in a private massage, you know, all your life, and you just, it's harder, you know, to be an outsider because you're not an outsider.
Yeah.
We have two very interesting questions from the public, and about 10 minutes to answer them. So I'm going to begin with the first one that arrived. Since you have been away from Portugal for so long, do you feel yourself less Portuguese, losing touch with it? Or it was the other way around? You feel more Portuguese? You feel that your identity was highlighted by it?
Oh, can I answer first?
Go ahead.
I think it's something very strange happens, because when I'm in France, I don't feel very much Portuguese. I don't feel Portuguese at all at times. When I'm in Portugal, or when I'm talking with my mother, it's like, or my family, it's like my accent comes out of nowhere. My, you know, the personality I usually have when I was in Portugal comes out of nowhere. And I see the same thing happening with my husband. That's why I noticed that I was doing the same, because when he's talking with his family or with his friends from Costa Rica, his personality changes, you know. It's like he's not a normal person. He's just very suddenly very tico. That's how we call people from Costa Rica in how you say, in a cute way. I can say that. Yeah. Tico. Yeah, tico. So I think, yeah, that's in my daily life, I don't feel Portuguese at all. But when I meet Portuguese, sorry, it's true.
I'm Portuguese shaming you.
Yeah. But when I meet Portuguese, or when I call my parents, it's like, yeah, it's like no time has passed, and I'm like what I used to be.
Out.
Yeah, yeah, it's very funny.
So how about the rest of you?
I have spent most of my life being an immigrant, trying to integrate myself into the community I'm in. And when we had Brexit over here, although I've been here for more than 50 years, when Brexit happened, I felt like a foreigner. as you know, and a lot of people I know have been feeling like that. And I don't know if it's because of that or because I'm getting older and I can see my death ahead of me, that I've as I'm growing older, I'm starting to think back to when I was very, very small, 5-year-old, and I'm missing. I'm kind of yearning for some Portugal, something about lots of things about Portugal, and I kind of have a feeling that I might end up dying there. I don't know. I mean, but it's maybe, there's a kind of, you come from the place and then you have to go back and die na minha terra, So, yes, that.
Please enjoy a few years before actually dying, because it's worth it. Okay.
I'm not planning to die any moment soon.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with it. When I left Portugal, I was 20 years old, and I was just trying to get away from everything that was Portuguese, because I saw it as like, I want to live a life of adventure. Portugal is never going to give me that, so I'm going to go everywhere and not feel Portuguese at all. And as I'm settling now, and my partner, he's Belgian, and we're thinking about the future, and I'm kind of like seeing myself kind of staying there for the rest of my life. I'm trying to hold on to my Portuguese identity. When I talk to my in-laws and I want to introduce them to to Portuguese foods and, Portuguese things. And I never worried about those things before. Like, I was very happy to putting my Portuguese identity in a way, a little bit behind me. I wanted to be the Portuguese abroad. And now, I want to hold on to more of more Portuguese stuff, because I'm thinking about the future, and I don't want to lose parts of me that are authentically Portuguese. So yes, I think the Portuguese abroad identity evolves a little bit.
Okay.
I'm thinking about how to answer that, but I'm not entirely sure what the best way to go about it is. I definitely feel my Portuguese identity is sort of slipping away, or at least trying to slip away. The longer I am abroad, the more I feel that pull about, letting go of the past, and especially about if there's things in the past that you didn't necessarily like or whatever. There is definitely this natural instinct that it's pulling away, and why don't you just embrace the culture of the place where you are? Just embrace it. It's so easy. Everything's in English. You're writing in English, working in English. Just embrace it. It's almost like I have the devil's pull on one side, and I have the Portuguese angel on the other side telling me, no, don't let go of that. And it is part of who you are, and it makes you who you are. And it's always something that's going to be with you, and you're always going to see the world through that lens because you had those experiences growing up. So it's a bit of a Portuguese abroad. I mean, I definitely feel way more strangely patriotic now than I did before I left. I never really considered myself a patriotic person before, but now I most definitely do. And if I see someone criticizing Portugal or any Portuguese people of any kind, I will definitely be more upset than I would normally.
I totally understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of this combination of feeling a little less Portuguese in one way, but also strangely more Portuguese in another way, which is very hard to explain.
Well, thank you very much for the mental image of a Portuguese angel.
Recently, for some reason, I've been eating lots of pastéis nata. I don't know why.
Do you want to add something, Susanna?
No, I feel pretty much like Patricia. I couldn't wait to get out of Portugal. I never felt Portuguese growing up for most of my life. Quite the contrary. It's like, what am I doing here? And I couldn't relate to anything. The only thing I enjoyed pretty much was the climate. And as I get older and after traveling a lot, it started because I wanted to introduce some of the Portuguese culture to my husband. He loves Portugal. He likes it more than I do, I guess. And with that, it forced me to relieve things of from my childhood, and I go there more often than I would otherwise because of him. And yeah, as I get older, I think I'm feeling more and more Portuguese. There's a bit of nostalgia, but I guess because I haven't found a place where I fit in anywhere. So it wasn't Portugal that was the issue. I guess it's just me, the way that I am. And yeah, but I've learned to appreciate a lot of Portuguese things after I left. I will not go back, but I still appreciate.
Thank you. So this last one is specific for Ricardo. Danielle asks, it states that your work is very focused in imperialism. And does your movement from one colonial I forgot how to say it. Putting it into another brought that side of your Portuguese background into relief. You can see the question, right? So it
Yes, it's a strange thing because Portugal's imperialism, I mean, I didn't know that much about it, but Portugal sort of started it, didn't it? The whole European expansion. We started, I think, as far as I'm aware, I think we started African slavery, at least across the Atlantic. But there was too few of us to actually keep hold of all the things that we got discovered, and we were overtaken by the other people. So we feel like the kind of heritage version of the imperial, it feels a little bit cute and quite, nice because it is much slightly further back. But that may well be ignorance. I always thought of the Portuguese as being very gentle. But actually, if you actually look at the history, I don't really know very well, but my impression now is that Portugal is actually quite violent. So, but I'm in my work, and so I am very interested in investigating and interrogating imperialism. But I think that is a very natural thing for anybody who is European, because we are all living in the post-imperial period, and so it's quite natural for us to really think about it now that it's finished, because apart from anything else, almost all the privileges and wealth that we have come from, a lot of it's been stolen from other people. So I think the Europeans in general, we're the most thoughtful about this experience because we have this unique view of it, because we have just fallen off the end of it. Whereas the Americans are still doing it, and the Chinese are going to try and do it, and so I think we've got a lot to tell people generally about the experience of imperialism, the guilt that you feel about it, and why it's a bad thing, and why we should stop it, and the cost that it has for the people who do it.
So I think we will end here. Thank you very much for your time and for your insights. I think it was a great start for Festival Contacto. We couldn't have asked for better people to be here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Very, very nice to meet you all.
Yes.
I will definitely check the books that I didn't read yet, stay put for everyone watching, and of course all of you too. Stay put for our next section about Sertãopunk. If you don't know what it is, then one more reason to watch it. So, in a Portuguese way, bye now. Adeus. Até a próxima.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Start.